Hi all, welcome to another episode of Saturday Architecture. I think there has been a break, and I think in a way it's kind of I'm happy that me and my entire family were exposed to COVID, and I'm very happy on two fronts. One, obviously, we are all doing well. Second, I'm very grateful and lucky that it was mild; it was not severe. Uh, Me and my wife had some fever, but my kids had really no, they were completely asymptomatic, and with home quarantine, we were able to come out of it. Uh, so I thought it's kind of interesting that when I went through this, right, lot of the architectural principles which I had taught kind of came back to me, and I was able to apply it. So it's just that architectural thinking is a habit, right? It's a mindset rather than just a set of tools, which I thought I would share over here. So let me just quickly run through what I thought and how I felt. Um, and then we can discuss your experiences beyond that. So I think one of the things which I would call is before infection, right, or before I call it breach, right, in the technical world. First is risk avoidance, which we were doing very well, right? Like from last Feb 2020, we have been extremely defensive as a family. Okay, we would have gone twice to eat outside. Okay, and that too early in the morning when there was no crowd in the restaurant. Totally, other family for friends visit would have been five or six maximum. That is known friends. Okay, unknown places, trips, nothing. Okay, no hanging out with friends. My son didn't. He went for one outing with his friends. My daughter had gone some 4 5 times, and so I can actually count it, right? And probably I'll be off count by one or two. That's all. Not even in terms of percentage. Okay. I was just giving that to give a kind of how much of risk avoidance we did. Um, so then I was thinking after the first wave, I was under the assumption that okay, I've kind of handled it, got over it. Okay. But then once it hit me, the king which he laid is assume, and considering what will happen, assume that the breach will happen. Okay. So you avoid risk, but always assume that it is there. So once it is there, what do? You got to prepare for it. So I so what are the things that you would probably need to prepare if you kind of ask me is um, mental readiness. So what I found is you got to prepare yourself mentally, because considering the amount of uh, good news or bad news or fake news or real news, there's just news everywhere, and I don't know what kind of news it is, right? Is it right, wrong, is it good, bad? I have no idea. Okay, and lot of it is very negative, and it is scary, and I'm not telling to shut us off, but then I'm telling it does affect you. Okay, so I'll give one simple example is that when I got infected, one of the my well wishers, he called me and said, my brother-in-law got also infected. The corporation came and sealed the front door and went. That whole night I couldn't sleep. I was worried, if my front door is sealed, what will I do? If there's an emergency, how will I get in? Somebody's got a chest breathing, how will they get out? They'll say corporation rule and go. I live on the first floor, so how will I get food if I want? How will I get supplies? The front door is fully sealed with a tin sheet. I lost sleep that night. Okay, now the thing is, if I lose sleep that night, then my recovery process gets stalled. I get into this negative feedback loop. And the other thing is about, I always get, see, now I've recovered. I have a small cough in the morning. Okay. But when the small cough comes after an infection, it multiplies your worry by 2 3 times. So psychologically, it is very important to be ready for it to happen, and every small thing will kind of amplify our fears. So we got to be ready. So I think one of the things is, I would say around 30% of the um, impact. This is my opinion. Okay, there's no scientific fact or data behind this, but it is just that um, 30% of how severe a COVID infection becomes for a person comes from their mental thing of how they can. In short, it will be something like, this is a fever, I have the resources within my body and outside to grind through it. It's not the end of the world. I'm not looking at apocalypse. Is what we have to keep repeating to ourselves. Yes, it is a tough thing. I will deal with it and I will get out of it. This is something we have to keep telling ourselves even before it has happened. Because when it happens, you will be already not be ready for it. So that's what I call as mental preparedness, and also do it for your family. So one of my friend, they got infected. He had a tough time keeping the kids. Kids are like teens, right? And they were panicking. So every day they'll get up and say, "No, what will happen to us? What will happen to us? I am not getting smell. When will that thing come back? Will I go to the hospital?" They are under constant tension. So prepare people around you before you get it itself. Because once it happens, everybody is in a panic mode and logical brain stops working. So that is another thing which I call. Then the second one is what I call as roles and responsibilities, right? Within the family, like let's say there is two adults and two children, right? What will happen if two adults are negative? Then what is going to happen? How is the family going to run? Right? So the two adults will go into quarantine. What will happen to the kids? Who will take care of the kids? Right? If the kids are very small, if they are teenagers, pre-teens, the handling becomes very different, right? At least pre-teens and or teens and above, you can do something. But if they are lower than that, who's going to take care? Now, it's a tricky thing, right? In an infected family, who will come from outside and take it and go? You need somebody who is trustable. Probably very close friends or family are the only ones who will want to take risk. So we need to identify that role and responsibility. Or there is a husband and wife. Husband is infected, wife is not. Wife is infected, husband is not. So in some cases, practically we have seen that the wife doesn't do a lot of external activities. Again, same friends, family. The wife doesn't know how to order on Swiggy. She doesn't have a Swiggy account on her phone. Okay, husband always ordered. The phone connection is not linked to the phone. Okay, and ironically, the wife will be very proud telling that my husband take care of all these things. He's so loving to me. Correct, but not in this case. Like it was too exposed. Like she's too stressed out. Imagine her plight: two kids and husband, very young ones. Husband is in quarantine in a room. He cannot come out of it. They can't even open and talk. Okay? Now she's sitting outside. She has to do so many things in the house. So when we said, why don't you just order food from outside? She doesn't know how to order. Okay, you have a phone, but what is that? Swiggy it's not connected. How to pay on e-payment? How to get that? Now this doesn't look very big, but you put when you are in that situation when the whole thing is coming apart, all these things become a big deal. So that's what I mean by roles and responsibilities. Who plays the role and what is the responsibility that they would take care of. So one of the things there is about looking at it as microservices. So let's say I have a teenage kid. I would say if something like this happen, ordering food is your problem because anyway they are good with phones. Okay, order Swiggy, configure that. Getting food for the family is your problem. Okay, give it off to that. I would say 6th standard or 7th standard plus kids, right? 6 kids can take care of that. So that is like a microservice. You getting food for the family is your problem. Train them for that. So the others need not worry about food. Okay, they can look on something else, like health will be somebody. And the last thing is about finance, right? Keep some cash flow ready in the month. And roles and responsibilities also another important thing is which is the medical person who I will read. It could be a family doctor, it could be a friend, it could be contact numbers in a phone. Get those things ready now itself. So then you become a lot more confident. Luckily, I had a doctor neighbor. As soon as it came, he told everything it's done. So it's just like help. So when you have, so they say there's this thing which I read, like a chance. I think it's a movie where this chance favors a prepared mind, kind of a thing. Right? I don't know whether a chance favors, but I think a prepared mind doesn't panic that much, if not anything else, right? And that has a direct impact of how quickly you recover. Now, practically, this is what we had actually done. We actually done a Kanban board. So, Gopes is my daughter and Boots is my son. And we had to do a lot of these things, right? Taking medicines, steaming. Um, so, it's like, so there were, so there was like medicines in the, so there was morning, afternoon, and evening. And then there is medicines to be taken, steaming and gargle. We had to drink a lot of water, oximeter and temperature notes had to be done. So temperature notes and steaming was the role of my son. Okay, drinking water for was with my myself, and giving medicines was my daughter's responsibility. She has to take it and ensure that everybody has eaten it, right? So that was her responsibility. And after 15 days, we did our test again and we tested negative. And that's basically because I have very old parents who are there right next to it. Now, what happened because of this is uh, I mean, all of us were there, but then for both me and my wife, the stress was significantly less because we didn't have to worry about. See, I think the thing is when you're under this infection, you get worried, right? Did everybody have their medicine? Did that gargling happen? That will add to your tension. So when you do this microservices thing, right, you have kind of given away that responsibility. So my daughter microservice will take care of giving medicines. So I just have to do an audit at the end of a day or once in 2 days. So it's not that she got it perfectly. She was missing it. Okay. But then after 2-3 days, it got fixed. It's like fixing a bug in a microservice. Okay, so the bugs were fixed. So after 2-3 days, it became very clear. So my son got the hang of it. It became a habit for them very quickly, and it was like each of us could do our own thing. So when it's kind of distribution of load, right? Not one thing got overloaded. One system, either me or my wife, none of us got overloaded. And also, interesting thing is, like probably now I'm realizing because kids had something to do, they didn't have time to sit and think what will happen. Everybody has something to do. Everybody is moving. Otherwise, somebody sits and then all they have to do is nothing but worry. So when you kind of distribute it at time, I think it also helps that everybody is occupied in doing something. Okay, and whatever I said is just my experience. Okay, there are a lot more tougher things outside where you don't get medicines, you don't get bed. None of these things is for that. But this is for that percentage before it happens, what you can do. And if you come up with a mild or a medium case, how doing some of these things will help us from not aggravating it further.
I think
this is something all of us can do.
I think for mental health, this is the most important thing. The very fact that you know that you can control the environment. What you just described is how do you control the environment? Let the body do its job. So all the environment around you, how you manage that environment, right? That is including mental health.
Yeah. So I think it's pretty tricky. I don't know, maybe because I've got this thing. I doubt if anybody can really escape it, especially currently the kind of exposures happening in India.
You see, I don't know. I might have even gotten it and gotten over it. I don't even know that, right? So because did I have my throat is all the time. I have mild cough all the time. I don't know whether I'm fighting COVID or this is just normal cough and cold.
True, correct.
Right. So, and my father actually last year, in fact, he was very sick. but the doctor said there is no, because we kept checking oxygen and all those things, says this is not COVID. So he didn't even actually test for COVID, right? So eventually they got some CT scan also done and says, okay, finally let us check for COVID. It turned out to be negative. But all of us still feel that he actually went through COVID, right?
Okay.
He was still at home, but fortunately his oxygen levels never dropped. So, but all other things, this is, we believe it was some sort of COVID only, because he got violently sick. So,
And it's a morphing thing, right? Like they say, one of the another friends is, I would say it's his opinion based on what he's heard, is that the newer strains you don't lose smell and taste. So I said I lost smell and taste. So he said, oh, you must have got the version 1 of it.
there are some 300 versions already doing the rounds.
Yeah, I said version 2, you don't have loss of smell, you have an upset stomach. So these are again, I mean, like,
you don't know. Yeah, I mean, you see, I was listening to some doctor's interview. He says even the RT-PCR test is an experimental test actually, and it's an experimental test. There is no, actually, none of, even FDA or anybody, nobody has actually approved that test. This is actually 100% sure to test for COVID, but most of the time it is accurate. So that's the belief, right? So now, is negative result from RT-PCR, is it good enough? I don't really know, right? But in most cases it seems to be working right now. In fact, I was just talking to some of my wife's friends. They're saying in Goa, for example, they're not even testing. If you show symptoms, they start treatment. So it doesn't matter what will the test prove, right? What will the test prove? You just assume. Just your example of assume breach, right? You just start treatment.
Oh, actually, that's a good point, Deepak.
Right.
I think I forgot to mention that. I think any cold or fever, right? There are a few standard things. I'm not going to tell that here. Talk to your own doctor and expert and get it. I don't want to do that part here. But basic few medicines are there. Okay, there is gargling kind of a thing. Steaming, these are all few things which just keeps your respiratory thing clean, right? When you have a small doubt, just do it from day. When you have a doubt itself, just start doing it, right? So it's assuming that you got it, and then you go through 15 days of that. You got nothing to lose. It's like you use extra vitamin C and vitamin D. It's not going to harm your body in any way.
Yeah.
Right. So you might as well just keep doing it, and I think it's kind of quarantine yourself and then do it. No need to do a test or anything. And I think that's another approach, is that you have a doubt, just go through that whole thing, right? It's like you have a doubt, your system is running slow, you do a scan, right?
Yes.
Right. Or you do a cleanup of hard disk if the application becomes slower. So I was kind of thinking like, oh, okay, so unknown things do, how to handle this architecture, how to handle unknown stuff. Okay, if you think you know what you are doing, that is science, and that's how we do software development, right? And everything crashes.
Yes,
we are having net unhappy end users and developers who are not using our applications. Developers don't follow the processes, right? So it's basically because I think we are behaving like this COVID experts, right, who know what is happening. But actually speaking, if you take the actual principles, right, what does finally, what do we need to be? We need to be healthy. Okay. Resilience is better than redundancy. It is cheaper, right? So you, instead of telling no breach will happen, and I mean, how much, like, for example, I just look at myself, how much can you protect yourself? Sit inside your room and lock yourself and not go outside? How long can you do it? And ironically, nowadays, you have to go to a doctor. Like, for example, my suspicion is, right, the recent thing, if we had gone out, I had gone out to take vaccinations. My wife had gone out to do a dental procedure. Okay. And a medical shop in the past 3 weeks. So in all, and when the medical shop we went, we clearly had masks. I mean, like mobile shop, we had masks. The other places is where we had actually lowered our masks. So the medical facilities are the place where you have a high percentage of infection chance.
You see, going to hospital is now most dangerous, right?
Now, what will you do?
What will you do? But you have to go. I
Somebody
also went to the
crashes.
hospital to take vaccination, and I was literally scared. I says there is no social distancing here. Everybody is like the Russian shop, and people are just crying over giving their Aadhaar card, this that. It was completely. Then finally, means whatever reason, in that hospital they said, okay, there's too much crowd. They took 5-6 people away, and I was one of those 5-6 people. So okay, come this side. You sit here. We'll give you vaccination here. In fact, actually, hospital did something good. They understood that this is not manageable. They said, okay, we'll give you vaccination. You do the formalities later on. So they actually, so I got the vaccination earlier, then I did all the other work related to paper, right? And for paying that 250 rupees, I had to spend like 2 hours just to pay for. I already got the vaccination.
So I kind of connect all these things, right? To handle it, right? It's called eventual consistency. Remember we talked about. So basically, they applied eventual consistency there.
Right.
Eventually, and actually, if you do that, right, it does makes things easy. You don't have to do this serial sequential thing.
Absolutely, it did not matter. It did not matter. Means I was surprised. I thought that system will break down. I said, how will this fellow know whether I got it or not, or how will I get my certificate, right? So, but finally it did work. So that eventual consistency did happen. So, and I got my certificate before I paid for that vaccination actually. So that was the
okay.
So the system did actually function.
I think that's an interesting way. So it really helps. So I just wanted to share that it's like probably if not technology, I think that way of thinking, right? The architecture way of whether you call it microservices or capabilities or assuming that a breach would happen, be prepared for it, have a, let's call it, you want to call it BC, business continuity plan, or right? I think it's at a family level, at an individual level.
So one of the things which I remember from the Nassim Taleb's thing now is, he says, do not optimize beyond a point, because optimization makes the system very fragile, right? So if you have to over engineer your system a little bit so that you can survive failure, right? Because the way today everything is designed, say optimize. He says, why do we have 2 kidneys? One can do the job. If there is an optimization concept, I should have only 1 kidney, right? Why you have 2 lungs, right? So the nature has evolved. It's left to a point where you can be resilient at the same time suffer a little bit, right? So don't over optimize. That was the message there. So maybe we have to think about where you can build in a little bit of fat so that you can get thin when you don't have food.
Yeah, I think it's about when you say over optimize, right? The other way is a little bit of inefficiency or imperfectness is actually good for the system.
Exactly. Because people believe it says if you want 100% predictability, you have to optimize. Right? That's what people end up doing. But what you're doing is one link in that chain breaks, the whole system collapses.
Correct.
So you have to have some degree of acceptance of failure. That's all of that chaos engineering and all those concepts, they are driving at that point. Right?
Good or bad. I think we have that too much in our Indian ecosystem, which is actually a little bit of a hassle, right? For all these things, right? Any other Western countries, they would have, like, the public would be panicking. I walk outside, see, ground level, right? My maid, my servant. Anna, that's nothing. It's just one fever. You put 2 tablets and go, it'll become all right. You're like, what are you guys panic? Okay, now, in wave 2, they are getting a little scared.
Yes.
Right? But beyond that, right, that thing that, what is going to happen kind of a thing.
See, we expect chaos. Right? We are scared of order, in fact. When something is very, very orderly, we start suspecting something. See, this is not right. This is too perfect to be good. And more often than not, if it is too perfect, it is usually not good.
It's too orderly, too organized.
It is too organized. This is not for us. So if everything happened with vaccination as it was expected, I would have been very, very surprised. Right? Means the whole thing fell apart with vaccination. It says they never predicted it. It said, okay, we have enough time. We will buy when we need to buy. Why spend money? All those things, right?
Correct.
So now we are in a situation. Says people earlier, the people who were saying, "Oh, please, we don't know the side effects. We need to wait for 1 year." A lot of people were hesitant. The people I know.
Yeah.
Right, people I know, people in medical fraternity, right? It is not normal people. They are being skeptical.
And then there was another crowd which said, I will take only Pfizer or Moderna. All these Covishield, Covaxins are like
they are fake.
I will go to US, get vaccinated and come. I'm not risking my life or my family's life with Covishield or Covaxin.
That was a business actually. Some travel agents were doing this thing as a vaccine tourism.
Wow.
So I don't know.
I think so. It's no, I don't know whether it is right or wrong, but sometimes it's all like unknowns, right? So there is one thing is that probably in architecture, which we fail as a technology is to kind of say, I don't know what I'm doing. Right? If I knew what I'm doing, none of the customers or business stakeholders will complain. They'll be more than happy for the next project. Their adoption should be breeze. But in none of the applications I have done so far, that has happened.
Customers don't know what they want, right? So it's not like they're two unknowns. They don't know, we don't know.
They don't know, we don't know.
So somewhere we have to find that compromise, right?
But we have to first acknowledge that we don't know, right? And I think in this COVID situation, it is really coming forth that actually it's even now people want to act as though they are known, but the reality is we really don't know what it is. We don't know what is causing it. We don't know how it will get cured. We don't know how it will change. And taking actions for that, I think, is a perfect scenario for applying architecture principles. And I think it's a great opportunity for architects to just look around, right? The challenges that we are facing and the responses, different systems, whether it is organizations or offices. Like, for example, things like, right, like let's say that Wipro put up a 100-bed facility. Tech Mahindra put up a 100-bed facility. Wipro set up a helpline. My wife is in Wipro, so I know that, right? So what does that mean? I would kind of say that, if I have a service designed to do a specific thing, as an architect, can I think of using it for something else? Like, so repurpose it, right? I think if, for example, it's something like you got Teams. Teams is for people to chat. Now, can I use that to monitor a error message coming from a particular channel? Now I'm building a man-machine interface, right? It was not initially meant for that, right? And then you start using it that way. Or is there is something like so I mean, I'm talking about Office 365 because it's easy. So let's say I had an Excel way of tracking it. Now I can use Power Automate to say when somebody adds an entry in the Excel, it will send out a message to telling that a new item was added to the Excel. With low code, no code, it kind of helps us do that thing. It's similar to like the trains being modified for carrying oxygens, right? So these are all, what are they? They are nothing but deriving, right? You are reapplying base class to something else. They are nothing but architecture principles in action.
I think one of the things which actually I also realized that there's a problem is the digital divide, right? So people who don't have access to technology. So one of the examples which I was reading in the newspaper only was people. So this the CoWIN app has an API, right? So CoWIN app has an API which you can query to find out where are the vaccine slots available. So people use that to sort of figure out where the vaccine slots are available, and they sort of in my words, they hoarded those vaccine slots, right? So people who understand how that API works, and they can exploit it. So there was a free program. I think you can just search on it online. You'll find out there's a free program available which will query that thing and tell you book your slot immediately. So it'll send you an alert, right? So if I'm looking for it, I have 10 members in the family. I will say, give me 10 slots, and it'll say, okay, let me find out where the 10 slots are. The moment it gets available, I just go block it, right? So so that creates a sort of means the person who understands this, who can exploit this
Has an undue advantage.
smartphone, right? They will obviously be at the top of this chain, right? And this food chain, right? Now, anybody who's just standing in the line and saying, please register me, right? Who doesn't have a smartphone, he's behind the curve now, right? And they are the losing party there, right?
Yeah. So when does a technology become good, right? Or when does a decision become bad? For example, probably in this case, making that API public is not actually a good thing to do.
So they actually went back and they actually fixed that API. So now API, you cannot do certain things. It will just provide you information. It won't let you book and other things, right? So it still means
I'm just curious. Was it a published API, or is
I
it
think
somebody managed to
you can search for it online?
Okay, I actually have some context on that. So basically, it created 3 subdivisions of people. Put people in 3 brackets. Okay, the lowest of the spectrum is people who doesn't have a smartphone or doesn't even know how to use the smartphone, smartphone or website or whatever. Then there is this middle layer where people can afford a smartphone or a website or have internet access and have the digital literacy to read the instructions and book. And the top spectrum is people who can reverse engineer the web app or the mobile app, figure out what it is using underneath. What they actually did, it was not like a published API. Okay. This app that they built was actually using a API endpoint to make the request to figure out like what are the slots available and book. So basically there were 2 APIs, read and write API. And the way this app or application was working is like you have to actually constantly refresh to see if there is a slot available. Because every hospital, whenever there is a slot available, they will just add it to the system. So you see the list now, it will say there is no slots. Maybe suddenly at 5 a.m., like 100 slots will be added from some hospital. And within a minute, it will go off. And then same thing will happen again at 6 a.m. or something like that. So people are trying to see what is the pattern. Now you cannot constantly keep refreshing. So that's when people kind of reverse engineered, figured out that internally it was actually using an API call. An API might have probably had some very basic authentication mechanism, or maybe it didn't. I don't know the exact specifics there. So what they did, they actually wrote a Python script which will make a call to the API, keep pinging the API. Whenever there's a slot, it will give them a Telegram notification. So there were 2 versions of this automation. One, it will keep pinging. As soon as there's a slot, it will post a ping to you, maybe in Telegram or something like that, so that you can immediately book. The other advanced version is like it will automatically make another API call to do the booking as well as also once you enter the details. Okay, and obviously, like these scripts, once they were done, they were open sourced or published in the public domain. And there were a lot of requests from people to actually, whoever published those scripts to bring it down, because it's actually giving unfair advantage to some.
Exactly.
Obviously, you don't want to keep, clicking refresh couple of times to book your slot. So you do this, but it is actually putting you in a very unfair advantage, right? Because even people who can actually understand or how to use the app will not now be able to. Because these slots will go out in like less than 30 seconds to 1 minute. Like how do you book IRCTC train tickets, right? Tackle tickets. Usually they go off within like 45 seconds or something like that. So yeah, basically like the interesting aspect was like it's not just digital literacy or not, right? It actually put people in three buckets.
Yeah. I mean, there's a divide. What I meant to say was there is a divide with people who understand, can do this, or in whatever way they can exploit it, and people who cannot.
And I think from what you are telling, right, this was not even for commercial benefit. At least
No
we can
commercial benefit.
Somebody I mean, I'm not justifying it, but I'm telling the motivation was making money is understandable.
Yes.
In the other case, right, it's actually a good intention. I don't know whether it's a good intention or a ego to kind of say, technically I can do something well.
It was
actually,
out of necessity.
It is. I mean, obviously, like the first person who developed that script would have probably done it out of necessity, right? Yeah. But now that this script is in the public domain, obviously, I'm pretty sure somebody would have thought, right? Okay, now I have this script. I can take a booking. I can say, okay, charge 500 rupees per booking, like how people do for Takkal booking, right?
Exactly.
I say, okay, give me 500 rupees. I'll get you the slot in the next 1 or 2 days, something like that. So that might have started, or somebody would have at least thought about it.
Yeah. I don't know what the mechanics of the booking exactly are, because when I did my this thing, I just registered, but I didn't get a slot. I just showed up and say, this is my registration book, do it now. At that time, there was not the second wave had not yet started, so people were more relaxed about not having slots booked, but the crowds actually were significant. This is the second day or something of that opening.
Yeah. So I think we are at time anyway. Thanks for joining again, and I think it would help each of you get some perspective of how to prepare, and probably my religion of architecture, I'm preaching that even in this, telling that those principles actually help in handling something as unknown as this, right? And I think it's also another motivator why we should practice this more, the principles of architecture, not just when doing technology and doing anything as well. So prepare well, be safe, stay safe, have good architecture to handle the safety of your wellness of you, your family, and your friends. And see you again in a fortnight from now.
Thank you.